Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are coming to you live from a few different places all at once on this very huge day in the world of PC hardware. Today, we're going to be talking about the next generation of desktop CPUs, Intel's 10th gen core processors. That includes a whole new set of products from i3s all the way up to the i9-10900K, the new world's fastest gaming processor. And of course, along with all the new processors, we also have a new socket and chipset, and that means all new motherboards, the Z490 series. There's a lot to learn about these new products, and fortunately today I am joined by two experts, Alex from Intel and JJ from ASUS. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Trisha.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here today. Before we dive into any technical details, can you both tell the audience at home what you do at your respective companies? Alex, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I am a global strategist for tech enthusiasts and also a little bit of gaming. So everything that is tech and is techy and is fun, I work with it and help the company plan for it. And I also help our product launch team to provide the right messaging for these tech community. So that's pretty much what I do.
Awesome. And JJ?
So for you guys joining the stream, thank you guys. Hopefully everybody's staying safe and staying healthy. On my side, I've been with the company now for a little bit over 10 years, and I've done a lot of different things. Really now my focus is trying to coordinate with our social media team and our product marketing team and helping to kind of provide technical insight and kind of like a bridge point between, I think, the enthusiasts that we're kind of trying to offer our products to, giving them insight, giving them, opinions on how, ASUS's product portfolio can really help to offer them a great, PC DIY experience. And then also take that information from the community and, pass that over to our internal team, whether it's our marketing team, our product management team, our design team, so that, we can be cognizant about trying to make the best products possible for those community users.
Love it. So on the stream today, we want to cover the new products and do a bit of a live buying guide to help people decide which CPUs and motherboards might be right for them. Almost all of the new products that we'll talk about will be available for purchase right now on Newegg, so check out the links below this stream if you are looking to maybe pick up something new. So let's start off with the Intel side. Alex, what should people know about the 10th gen core processors?
Sure. So we're very excited to launch this product, even though we mentioned it more or less about a month ago. There's actually different things that we're very excited about. One of the things that I want to talk about is, like you mentioned, this is one of the fastest processors out of the box. For our flag processor, the Core i9K, actually the Core 900K, you can actually hit frequencies of 5.3 gigahertz. But before we get there, I kind of want to explain more or less how it works and the different frequencies that you actually can hit for that processor. So for example, the base frequency for that specific, for the Core i9K, it starts at 3.7. And then if you're familiar with turbo boost, that means that all the cores are going to hit at a higher frequency. It will hit 4.8 gigahertz. So all cores are going to be running at 4.8. Now, there's a new thing that we're introducing to this family that we had before, that we had in our high-end desktops, but it's new actually to this family, which is a Turbo Boost 3.0. And what it does is we select the best two cores that you have in the processor, and we actually crank the speed even higher. So from 4.8, those two cores can actually go to 5.2 gigahertz. And then the next thing that we have in there, which is actually brand new for the 10th gen, is called a thermal velocity boost, that it will allow you hit frequencies of 5.3 gigahertz, but that will be only for one core. Now, of course, all these turbo technologies and boost technologies are depending on thermal power and depending on your workload. So depending on where your processor and pretty much your system is at that, it will actually hit those different types of frequencies. So that's one of the things that we are interested in. Another thing that we're interested in is actually the core, the cores. We have added two cores to pretty much all of our product stacks. So for example, the Core i9 in the previous generation, we only had 8 cores, but now we actually have 10 cores. So the same thing goes for the Core i7, Core i5, and Core i3. So for example, the Core i3 now actually has 4 cores, the Core i5 has 6 cores, and the Core i7 has 8 cores. So we have increased our core count, which is we're pretty excited about that. And that also leads us into another cool feature that kind of goes into overclocking. And this feature is hyperthreading. We have enabled hyperthreading from all our Core i3 all the way to our Core i9. So now all of those, all our core stack processors have hyperthreading. And that was well, so yes, we have enabled that, but the actual feature I want to talk to you about, I was getting ahead of myself, sorry. I'm too excited. The feature that I want to talk to you about is that now you can actually disable hyperthreading pair core. So previously you can actually enable hyperthreading, but that will be for all the cores. But now you can actually go and select that specific core that you want to enable or disable. So for example, you can actually go and look into your BIOS, and JJ can correct me, but you can go look at the BIOS and you will see which are your top cores that it will be set to hit those high frequencies. And you can just go and select like, okay, I'm just going to disable the hyperthreading for these two because I know these are going to be my massive cores, and I can let the other cores just to do the kind of the quote unquote mundane work, but like do the background work. And these guys are going to be the ones running the app. So that is a great feature to have to fine tune your system. And so we're very excited about that because that is one of the features that we're providing for overclockers. We're providing different features for overclocking. So we said enabling, disabling hyperthread on their own. The other one is we're providing new voltage frequency curves, so more detailed voltage frequency curves that actually JJ Pro will go a little bit more in depth in that, on how it's implemented in the ASUS motherboards. We also are providing PEG and DMI knobs that you can tinker with. And by PEG, I mean the PCIe lanes that are actually in the processor, and DMI is actually the connection between the processor and the PCH. So those are
that's a big one, right? I mean, not to kind of butt in there, right? But it's pretty exciting, right? Because historically, right, there's been a lot of restrictions when it comes about kind of making adjustments to the PCIe bus as well as the DMI bus, because when they were previously linked, right, of course, if you made adjustments to those buses, you could compromise overall system stability or kind of the functionality of something like your USB port or like a SATA port or something along those lines. So now you can kind of try to extend whole levels of system performance across kind of all the different interconnects. So it just allows you to kind of just have more levels of tweaking and tuning available to you, right? Where it's not just maybe about CPU, it's not just about cache, it's not just about DRAM frequency, but it's also even about different buses and trying to get a little bit more out of your system.
Yeah, that is exactly what it means. Because I don't know, for you guys who have played with the clocks or trying to do some overclocking before, a PCIe is actually a very sensitive,
very tight spec.
Yeah, very, very, very tight spec for that. So if you just change it like by a couple of megahertz, then it won't be as stable. So actually, this brings it more controls to help you to get that. Let's see. Oh, and go ahead. You're saying something.
Oh yeah, no, and I was just gonna kind of touch back on there that you know, the ability that you've talked about in terms of having the flexibility to have HT be essentially enabled or disabled. Again, that's also, I think, giving you guys more, giving us, the community of the users, right, more flexibility at really trying to tailor what the level of kind of overclocking performance you're trying to target, right? Because since you've already given us more cores now, you're also kind of maximizing that ability to maybe see, is there a limitation at how much more I can drive frequency, right? So it's that balancing act of, you know, saying, do we want to even kind of drive higher frequencies at the expense of kind of maybe dropping off a little bit of that HT? Because I've already got a good amount of cores that especially for gaming workloads and general applications, are going to be great, but I might more readily benefit from the increase in frequency. So I think that's the important part too, is we want to give that contrast that this type of functionality has really been purpose-built to benefit, I think, gamers and enthusiasts that are looking for those improvements in clock frequency. Because I think we know it's always a balance, right? That the more cores, definitely that can provide value, but it becomes application dependent. But frequency always gets you a benefit.
Yeah, frequency always helps you a lot, and that's a good point that you bring. That leads me into one of the things that we actually have done that we're happy about, and we're very enthusiastic. We're pretty excited about is our integrated memory controller. We have done some changes to it, and we have done some different things to make it more robust. So you'll definitely see some, and I don't want to steal JJ's thunder, but we'll definitely see some world records in there for RAM, high frequency RAM, so RAM overclocking. And actually, there's been some reviews out there in the internet that actually will show you that higher RAM speed will actually help you improve your frames per second. So that's one thing that you could probably look into there too. And yeah, so those are different knobs that we're providing that we're very excited. The other
Yeah, and I
thing,
think also
sorry.
to the, oh, sorry, just to the DRAM point, and I think that it's definitely important there because historically, right, we've seen in previous architectures that as you scale the CPU frequency, it can tend to limit the overclocking capability of the CPU as well, right? It becomes a real great balancing act, I think, on your guys' engineering side to be able to have an architecture that allows you to be able to drive very high CPU frequencies and also have very high unlinked DRAM frequencies. So the fact that we can see not only your SPD values of what you have, like officially 2933, but comfortably really any one of these K parts can be running no problem, 4000, 4200, 4400 megahertz, while also running, 5 gigahertz plus. It's pretty impressive because historically that's never been possible in terms of driving such high DRAM frequencies at the same time with such high CPU frequencies.
Yeah,
And
so
I want to remind everybody who's shopping at home right now that the processors that are unlocked for overclocking, we're talking about all these amazing things you can do, are the ones that end up with the letter K. And they should be paired with the Z chipset motherboard. JJ will have more details on that later, I'm sure. But I love the level of customization that you guys are talking about and really putting the control in the hands of the users. This is amazing.
Yeah, so there's also all those are the different features that we're excited about, and actually for myself, one of the parts that I'm really excited about is the Core i5 K. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Core i9K is awesome, but the one that I think that I'm eyeing a lot is that Core i5K. It starts with a 4.1 base frequency, it could go all the way to 4.8, and it's unlocked, so you can just play even more with it. So it gives you a lot of different opportunities also. I mean, the whole stack is amazing. So I'll let you guys look at the reviews and let JJ give you a little bit more background on the different motherboards that they can actually provide and pair it up with.
Now, Alex, with the 10th gen CPUs, you guys have also done some die thinning to provide better thermal performance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. So actually for this 10th gen generation, and only for the SKUs that you can overclock, so the ones that are ending K, like Trisha said, we have make the die actually a little bit thinner, and that way we can actually control better thermals. And once we thin the die, we actually had to increase the heat spreader that goes on top, and we have increased that heat spreader with copper, so it's a better thermal conductive, so actually keep those temperatures more under control. So of course, once you're hitting a 5.3 gigahertz, or once you're hitting those high frequencies, you're going to get hot quickly. But we have done that in order to have a better control of the thermals. So it's a great improvement. It's actually kind of talking to the tech community of, hey, look, we do listen to you, and we're making products for you, and you wanted the high frequencies for gaming and overclocking. And this is one of the things that we do. Besides all the overclocking controls and improvements on the memory controller, all those things, this is one more thing that actually we take into account and when we design our products to provide you a great product.
Very cool. And Alex, can you give us kind of a broad overview who the different CPU tiers are for, as far as elite gamers, streaming, content creation, media consumption, kind of where does it all fall in?
Sure. So, for example, for the Core i9, right, because you have the most amount of cores and threads. So the great thing is that processor is pretty much for everyone. I mean, when it comes to content creation, right, depending on which application you're using, it will either be frequency dependent or core dependent. And this one and the Core i9 provides the best of both worlds, right? It's a balance between cores and frequency. So depending on if you are running either Adobe After Effects or you're doing Premiere, depending on those two, and depending what kind of filters and things you're doing, is going to be frequency dependent or core dependent. Or if you're a gamer, if your game is specifically frequency, it's a huge point there. Then as we go down the stack, you start seeing different pairings for different types of people. So, for example, the Core i7, which was a previous Core i9, because now we have 8 cores, with a previous Core i9 had 8 cores. That also is a little bit more focused towards gaming. I mean, you can still do great content creation, but as you get closer down the stack, it's going to be focused a little bit more on gaming. But I mean, that doesn't mean you will not be able to do the other stuff. But yes, it's the other ones are, as you come down, it's a little bit better towards gaming.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and go ahead, JJ.
Oh, no, I just want to actually touch that. One of the things that actually a lot of people forget about that's really great within Intel's architecture, especially for creators, if you talk about something like an Adobe Premiere, right, is the QuickSync technology that is part of the CPU is actually an accelerated component. So when you talk about the benefit to actually creators, right, there's multiple parts of the actual CPU itself that get leveraged. So when you talk about not only that DRAM, that frequency, the high core count, but also that quick sync, it can actually considerably improve the actual render time performance. So there's a lot of kind of layers to those pieces in terms of kind of how you evaluate, what's the right CPU for the kind of the right platform. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think at the end of all this, right, with it being 10th gen and also being the Z490 based chipset that aligns with that, this is really purpose built towards enthusiasts. So I think the users that are most interested in kind of really tailoring and defining the performance of their system, regardless of whether they're content creator, a streamer, advanced productivity, science and simulation, or just a diehard gamer, right? They're going to be able to have the right kind of pairing for them.
Which is excellent. So a reminder to everyone who is watching right now at home, as we're talking about this, these new CPUs and motherboards are available right now. We've got links in the description, again, below this video that will take you where you need to go. Okay, so that covers a lot of the basics of Intel's new processors. Now let's kind of turn things over to the ASUS side. JJ, what should people know about the new ASUS Z490 motherboard lineup?
Well, I think the first one is you just nailed it right there, right? Z490, right? So we've got a brand new chipset to really align with this 10th generation series of processors from Intel. That's important to note because, of course, these motherboards are specifically designed for this latest generation, right? There's new types of power requirements that are in play. There's optimizations that we've made to be able to maximize the DRAM frequency capabilities, right? And so everything from top to bottom is tailored, designed for this. And so, while there's still really great parts that are going to be available in terms of Z390, it's not going anywhere. It will still be available in the marketplace along with 9th gen parts, right? They are not interoperable, so you want to make sure that you're looking respectively at the right products. At the same time, too, sometimes people wonder about sometimes kind of key differences. I think, before we get into what ASUS is bringing in terms of the specific series, where we've got actually 5 different series to talk about, so a lot of boards as always. There's going to be some cool things that I think Intel has done in terms of kind of the platform itself, in terms of making sure that there's a couple cool technologies that I think the industry has been excited about. And so these really, I think, tie into networking and kind of being a key aspect. So one, you've got 2.5G kind of really being a big point now in terms of kind of being chipset ready. Alex can kind of speak to this a little bit in terms of kind of their team. Intel has so many aspects in terms of what they're doing, whether it's from NAND development and storage to, of course, their CPUs to, of course, server to networking technologies, right? They help to really kind of be at the forefront of this. And so when you talk about now having that next kind of level of networking performance, you're going to have 2.5G networking, which is pretty much going to be a baseline for most of our boards. And then also you're going to get the fastest wireless standard right now with Wi-Fi 6 and 802.11ax based technologies, which the really impressive part is there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around for Wi-Fi 6, but in reality, when you pair it with a quality AX router, which of course we make quite a number of those, you can legitimately be approaching 800 to almost 1,000 megabits. So you can literally be getting almost essentially gigabit class wireless performance, right? With low latency, great throughput, great signal stability, and then even tack in stuff like improvements to Bluetooth, because that's all part of that controller. So it's really great that we're not just getting this improved experience in terms of the CPU, the DRAM, support for, of course, all those robust technologies like the latest generations of USB connectivity, but also improvements in networking, right?
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some detail here, help our audience figure out which of these boards might be the right choice for them. We, of course, have different tiers for gamers, builders, creators. Where do all these boards fit? Where would you like to kick us off, JJ?
Yeah. So in terms of our board stack for this generation, we have our Prime series of motherboards, and we then have our ProArt series of motherboards, our TUF Gaming series of motherboards, and our ROG Strict series of motherboards, and then formal ROG series of motherboards. And then lastly, kind of a little bit separate from Z490 is going to be our WS series. So it's not a Z490 based chipset. It's actually different. It's the W480, but that is actually going to be supporting the 10th generation Xeon based parts, which is a great option for prosumers and professionals that want ECC memory support in that Xeon based offering. And then also, while it's not going to really be a huge focus for us in this live stream, there are a great range of 10th gen CPU parts that are not K-based parts, so they're not overclocking centric, and so those have a really great home at on a B series based motherboard or an H series motherboard, which will also have gaming variants. So a lot of kind of the gamer centric technologies that we're going to be talking about, whether it's special packet priority or improvements to audio, or of course RGB are going to be present on those boards. So definitely, if you're interested, you of course can check out the corresponding product pages at ASUS as well as at Newegg if you want to find out about those B and H series boards. But here we want to spend the time to really kind of talk about what we're doing on the primary Z490 base variants. And so, with the Prime series, really our kind of focus first and foremost there is going to be a target towards, I think, general productivity, content creation, and an alternate choice to gamers. It's kind of become very much like a stalwart series for ASUS, where it kind of is this jack of all trades type of motherboard, but traditionally where they say jack of all trades and master of none, it does actually pretty much all of its roles really well. So it's a really great foundational board, and it also has a little bit of a more distinctive aesthetic. As you can see, the white aesthetic really kind of trends to brighten things up and just give it a different vibe than what you would see from the more dark monochrome that we have present on our ROG Strix as well as our ROG series based of motherboards. Now, moving from the Prime series, and we move into our brand new series that we're now just introducing for Z490 will be our ProArt series. So ProArt is, I'd say, kind of an evolution of what we've seen from the Prime series, and also kind of a little bit of an adjustment from what we've also had in a very long-running WS series of motherboards. So the WS has always been a series that was really focused at, very high levels of kind of professional uses, prosumer, science and simulation, and content creation. But what we found is, maybe there were more kind of specialized design attributes that weren't always used by those user bases. And so we wanted to bring that price point a little bit down while still giving you a focused design for prosumers, professionals, and content creators. And that's what we have with the ProArt series. There also are going to be specific aspects, as you can see, within kind of like the design aesthetic, where it's kind of subdued and clean. It really has a professional vibe to it. It's not kind of RGB focused, although it does have RGB for some of those creators that want to be able to light up their builds. You've got integrated Thunderbolt 3 technology, which is a great coarse I/O specification that's afforded by Intel. And then from there, also even things like 10G support and dual LAN configurations. So that is really a great new option, which again, we're tailoring really towards that kind of more prosumer and kind of content creation based user out there. But if they spend a little bit time gaming as well, it'll comfortably do that. And it also supports overclocking.
Right.
Moving past the ProArt series, we do have the WS series of motherboards, which, like as I noted earlier, is the W480, and it's designed for Xeon-based processors. So that is going to be another offering that we'll have available, and we'll actually have it even offered in another variant where it'll come within one of our actual workstation systems as well, which will have outfit with the motherboard, chassis, everything all together. So it's a more kind of drop-in ready solution for some of those users that need that type of system. But for most of the users kind of watching the stream, I think their interest is going to be in our gaming related lineup. And so we've kind of now really solidified our gaming lineup to be three different series. So we have our TUF Gaming series, which is our entry, our gateway series. This is replacing our previous generation of TUF models that we had for a very long period of time, which were kind of also, I'd say, a little bit of a hybrid. Kind of they were in that Prime or ProArt kind of designation of kind of being content creators, gamers, prosumers, professionals, users that wanted a little bit of a different aesthetic. But with TUF Gaming, what we really wanted to do was offer a great foundation of giving you a board that has the ASUS kind of reliability, stability, and feature set that we're known for, has a gamer-focused aesthetic, as well as gamer-oriented design points, right? Whether that's improvements to audio and networking, as well as reasonable overclocking, design attributes, and then as well as also streamline, I think, the experience. One of the key things with TUF Gaming has been what we call our TUF Gaming Alliance, working with many partners in the industry to make sure that there's a high level of interoperability and compatibility amongst everything from the chassis to the coolers to the fan to the memory, so that you can tie things in really easily. And so with TUF Gaming, a great foundational place to be able to kind of start off your builds. I think works really well for those kind of i3, i5 based CPUs, but you could even run i7s in there as well. Moving into the kind of the more enthusiast segment, we're still getting into that sweet spot for i5, i7, and of course the i9. We're now move into the ROG segment. So in kind of our middle pack right there, we have the ROG Strict Series. So Strict Series has kind of really become, stalwart for us. Huge amount of gamers really, really love this board. It has a very distinctive design aesthetic. It's of course entirely monochrome, so there's no colors to contend or compete with how you want to define the look and feel for your build. It'll have really kind of the baseline of all the key features that you really want that there's not going to be anything that you're going to feel that you're wanting from on this board, whether it's power delivery, whether it's I/O connectivity, whether it's expansion support. All these things are going to be present here. And one of the really cool things is that we spend a lot of effort here to give the gaming community a lot of choice. So we will have all the form factors covered within the Strix lineup. So you can get ATX, you can get micro ATX, and you can get mini ITX. And right here in the B-roll, you can also see a brand new introduction for us in ROG, which is a white based aesthetic. And so this is something we're super, super excited about now offering to our gaming community, because in ROG, we've also been expanding out our white ecosystem. So everything from white headset to white chassis to white power supply, even new white CPU coolers, so that for those gaming users that are looking for a different experience when it comes to kind of a white build where you get more reflection and more, I'd say, a more illuminated kind of type build, as opposed to kind of the black kind of stealth out look that you get with a lot of the darker boards. You've got both choices available to you under the ROG lineup. Now, lastly, in terms of kind of the flagship, and really the boards that we always, of course, spend the most amount of time and effort on, is going to be ROG. So, ROG is the oldest motherboard series really in the industry when it comes to boards that were designed and developed for enthusiasts, for those that demanded the best, right? That are looking for not only the quality, the innovation, but a feature set that is really complementary towards users that want to build the absolute best type of systems, or they want to push the envelope when it comes to overclocking, or they want to have something that is entirely distinctive in terms of its design aesthetic. Those are all tenets that we really, really focus on to really dial into the design of what we're offering for ROG. So for this generation, we're actually going to have 5 boards in total, but we're only going to be talking about 4 right now that are going to be available initially at launch. And so that is going to be the Hero, the Formula, the Apex, and then really the ultra flagship with the Extreme. So 4 absolutely just amazing boards. Again, like I said, the benchmark for really enthusiasts that are out there.
Yeah, really, really beautiful. So you have a variety of different motherboard options available depending on what people are looking for. What can you tell me about what's consistent across all the motherboards from ASUS? What will people get in an ASUS Z490 board?
Sure. So I think the first one, while there's always, of course, varying opinion in terms of how much aesthetics are of importance, right? I think the reality is that the PC DIY community is now at a place that people that decide to build a system are passionate about the experience of building that system, and the aesthetics of that are important. And so we've really, I think, taken that to heart in terms of the overall design aesthetic across all the boards. So each one of the series has a distinctive, clean, and well identifiable ID. And I think that's important in terms of kind of really allowing you to kind of find the right board that fits your kind of personal vibe in terms of what you want your system to look like. And of course, that's going to be complementary with things like our Aura technology. All the boards are going to be featuring ASUS Aura Sync. It's the widest, most extensive ecosystem for RGB lighting in the industry. So whether you're going to be using ASUS components or partner-related components, you can drop those in there. You can synchronize all of them. You've got the headers on the motherboards to allow you to link and control them. And like I said, directly when you're looking at the motherboards, you're going to have these ID designs that I think are really clean, bold, minimal, subdued. Ultimately, you can find the right board for you when it comes to that aesthetic narrative. Now, moving beyond aesthetics, 10th gen, I think a big part of the story here is, of course, the really impressive clock speeds that are being afforded for this generation. And not only the out-of-box clocks, but of course, the overclocking capability. And so for this generation, we kind of really went back to focus in on the power delivery design for the motherboards. So pretty much across the board of whichever model you're looking at, we shifted the power delivery design to focus on power stages. So as opposed to in traditional, or let's say legacy-based board designs, you might have multi kind of power component VRMs. So you would have essentially your MOSFETs. You might have a high side MOSFET, low side MOSFET, then you have your inductors. Of course, you have your PWM, you've got your capacitors, your chokes, all kind of combined in there to create the VRM. But ultimately, our goal here was, because of the the high clock speeds, the high core count, we know that there's going to be demands in terms of power. There's going to be wide swings going from idle frequencies to, of course, very high aggressive overclock frequencies, and also managing efficiency and thermals for the VRM. So it was really important for us to be sensible about how we approach the power delivery design, and that regardless of which board you were going to get, we wanted to be able to give you a VRM that was going to be stable, reliable, efficient, and ultimately provide you a good experience. Regardless of how you want to approach it. Some users are going to want to just drop in a 240 millimeter AIO. and just be able to get kind of target out of the box turbo performance. And then other users are going to want to maybe take advantage of our AIOC technology that we'll talk about in a little bit and get even more performance. And then you'll get a smaller set of users that are going to go really crazy. They're going to go into the UEFI and they're going to manually tune every single parameter, and they're going to look to get 5.3 gigahertz on all cores with 4800 megahertz right on the DRAM. And so we want to be able to have a board that kind of complements every single one of those sets. So big goal here was making sure that the power design meets that. So across the board, all of them are utilizing a power stage design, as opposed to, like I said, that more legacy-based design. In addition to that, also, we maintain something that we introduced previously in what we call the teamed architecture. So essentially, we take two of our power stages and combine them together to be the most responsive, which we find it works really well for these high core count CPU architectures, and really providing us the best response in terms of that regard. So the power design is something I think that a lot of people are going to find important, and this also does tie in a little bit into PCB board design and other elements. All the boards are going to be a minimum of 6-layer, and some of the boards might even be higher than that, might be an 8-layer PCB board. We've also integrated actually 2-ounce copper in what we call our StatCool 3 PCB design. That is there to also help to maximize thermal performance across the PCB, because the socket itself, when you're pulling a lot of power, right, can get pretty warm. So you want to have a good cooling solution, but also it's our job to make sure that we have efficient thermal dissipation built into the inherent design of the motherboard, along with the VRM operation. So those are kind of consistent attributes that you're going to find even on something like our Prime or our TUF Gaming series. They will feature that 6-layer PCB with that StatCool 3 design, and like I said, those power stages. Moving into, I think, the next area, storage and connectivity. The platform is very, very feature rich in terms of what you would kind of expect. I think a lot of users, they upgrade in arcs, right? You talk about like 3-year, 4, 5-year arcs is how you kind of traditionally approach building a system. So a lot of users might be coming from maybe like the Z77 era, or maybe even Z68 type of era. And there's a lot of changes, right? You're going to get a big uplift in IPC. You're going to have more cores. You're going to have much better DDR4 frequency. You've got native support for NVMe, USB 3.1, USB 3.2, Thunderbolt 3 support, newer LAN. All these I/O specs are something that, when you compare that to what you might be running before, those are not just small, but they're sizable, upgrades in terms of what the experience is going to be when you talk about your connectivity experience. And so all the boards are all going to feature pretty much these across the board, right? And like I said, for some even the higher end boards, they'll take some of the specification even further, but like ROG will be phasing into like, dual NICs and things like that. And we'll touch on that when we get into some of the more ROG specific SKUs, but I think that is a big point. Also, storage in terms of M.2. M.2 has really kind of become the storage of choice, I think, for most builders right now. It's really superseded SATA in terms of not only price, it's pretty much price parity, but of course it can offer significantly higher performance. So it's fantastic that you not only have, of course, full support for things like Optane-based solutions, but in addition to that too, right, pretty much all the boards are going to all support 2 M.2 drives. So if you want to be able to run just 2 drives logically, or you want RAID configurations, take advantage of the RST options that are available in our RAID wizards, you can do all that stuff really easily. And for even higher end boards, like on ROG, all ROG will have a minimum of 3 M.2, if not even 4 on the higher end SKUs. So pretty cool, even on something like our mini ITX board, where you've got dual M.2, and even on something that small, you'll have that flexibility.
Yeah, that's super cool. Talk to me about audio.
Yeah, so audio is always a big focus for us. We were really kind of the industry leaders in terms of first implementing an isolated audio specification on motherboards. And once we kind of did that on ROG, we found that kind of really the industry followed trend with that to really kind of try to focus that on more boards. And so actually, regardless of the vendor, you're now getting a benefit that came really from ROG innovation and design. And that's something that we've now consistently now implemented pretty much across the board. So again, if you're looking at our Prime series, our TUF Gaming series, ROG Strix, ROG, all of them have our isolated audio design, so you get an improvement in that. And we also have actually continued our partnership with DTS. So we're actually bundling in for many of the boards, DTS Unbound technology, which is really, really cool for a lot of gamers, as opposed to traditional just standard positional 7.1 or 5.1 base audio. you can actually now incorporate positional height matrixing for actually audio. So when you're using this with your traditional speakers or your headphones, it can add actually really interesting elements of immersion that is available to the user to customize in there. So these are, again, kind of, we try to look at each one of the areas of the kind of the audio experience. But regardless of the user that you're at, whether you're watching movies, whether you're listening to music or playing games, or maybe just proofing content that you're working on, the audio experience will be elevated.
Awesome. Yeah, it's something that I feel like not a lot of people think about when they're shopping for a board, especially if you're kind of gaming minded. You kind of think power, and so it's really important that you bring that up. Talk to me about networking, JJ.
Yeah, so I'm a huge networking enthusiast. I love getting in the nitty-gritty when it comes to Wi-Fi speeds and packets and all kinds of different kind of aspects. And so I was really excited that that the specification support that we really committed to here is really outstanding. So really 2.5G is really the big one. So this is something I think a lot of the industry has been waiting for a long time, to see kind of the maturity of finally phasing in something that exceeds the 1 gigabit standard. And now with that support being offered by the chipset, where we can drop in that controller and implement it onto the board, gives us that ability that we can pass that on. And the great thing is that you can access this still with traditional networking infrastructure and standardized Cat5 e-cables. So you don't necessarily have to go and make massive reinvestments to be able to maximize from that 2.5G specification. So I think that's awesome, because you're talking literally over twice the throughput of what you had in previous 1 gigabit. And the community will tell you the consensus amongst Intel network controllers is outstanding. The maturity, the reliability, and the stability of the Intel NIC and the ProSet driver stack is outstanding. There's tons of options to be able to tweak and tune things. And for us, also, every generation, we measure things like UDP packet performance, which is a really key part to online gaming. And we consistently find that really the Intel NICs give us outstanding levels of performance in that regard.
Yeah,
in addition, go ahead, Alex.
I just wanted to add that there's something really important that you touched on, was the 2.5 gig, and people keep asking like, why 2.5 gig and not 10 gig? And the important point that you made was like the infrastructure. The infrastructure is already there, set up to support 2.5 gig. So the current cabling that is there will support it. Instead of you're going to invest on 10 gig, then you actually have to go change all your Cat wires to support that. So yeah, that was a great point to point out. That the question comes up quite often.
Yeah, and for users that do kind of really want the demand to even go higher end, on our RG higher end series, we will actually have dual LAN implementation. So for users that want to be able to jump into 5 gigabit or even 10 gigabit standard, we will have that as an option. But we really feel that the 2.5G is kind of the right direction. And then going along with that, we already touched on it earlier, but of course Wi-Fi 6, with a vast majority of the boards that we're pretty much talking about within the respective series, will have the latest generation AX201 Wi-Fi 6 controller on there. So that's a really impressive chip, not just from speed. A lot of times there's focus on throughput, but the reality is, in the previous generation Intel Wi-Fi specs that we had on board, like the 9260 series, you were already talking about really fast parts. Those parts were legitimately giving you, 450 to 750 plus megabits of real world throughput with low latency. On top of that, they were already supporting a lot of key technologies like multi-user MIMO, 160 megahertz band support, a lot of really great stuff to be able to give an outstanding wireless experience. But if you've got a board, an older generation of board that didn't have any Wi-Fi, or had a very first gen Wi-Fi, so maybe just 2.4 or lower band performing 5 gigahertz, this is going to be a huge uplift. One, it is backwards compatible with AC, so if you've got an AC based router, it'll still entirely work with it. But when you pair it with an AX router, there's so much other things that are going to come along with the ride, whether you're talking about simultaneous like workload efficiency, which is a really big one, where traditionally most people think about your router and your wireless devices all essentially being served at the same time. That's actually not how it happens. It's a sequential process. The actual router will treat each device in a sequential narrative, but we perceive it to be that it's all happening concurrently. But one of the really impressive parts about AX-based technology is the implementation of multi-user MIMO, which essentially is multiple user, multiple input, multiple output, and it happens on upstream and downstream. So that means that the router can truly treat these devices in a simultaneous fashion as opposed to sequential fashion. That improves your overall experience, your responsiveness. And there's a lot of other really cool stuff that is baked in there to just be able to provide you a legitimately, I'd say, wired experience, but wirelessly. So I think for a lot of enthusiasts, what we're seeing is with these latest generations of the Wi-Fi, and especially now with Wi-Fi 6, when you pair it with an AX-based router, you can really do anything you want, whether it's going to be uploading, downloading, gaming. You don't have to feel that your wireless is going to be your limiting factor in terms of the experience. But at the same time, the benchmark has now been moved now with, of course, 2.5G networking, right? So as always, everything's moving along, but great experience, wired or wireless.
Now, for enthusiasts who are looking at overclocking, please tell me what features these boards offer as far as both overclocking and cooling.
Yeah, so this is where I think we've spent maybe the most amount of work. And, I'll probably cut it here to a little bit of slides to kind of show you some interesting things. But, the first thing is that a couple of generations ago, I actually started on the X299 chipset, and then we actually reintroduced a new version of it on Z390, is a technology that we called AIOC. And really kind of the goal there was to be able to distill a huge amount of time and effort that our R&D team essentially puts into the testing and validation of overclocking performance. Not many people realize, but there's literally thousands of man hours that go into the design and development of the board and performance analysis testing. And so, to give you a rough example, for 10th gen alone, we've tested over 1,000 CPU parts, getting extrapolated values of what overclocking markers will be for these CPUs. And so that's, of course, more than any reviewer will get, and that will be much more than any single consumer will have available to them. So what we want to be able to do is take all that information and distill it down into a usable mechanism that is friendly for the user and also beneficial to enthusiasts. And that becomes challenging because how do you complement both sets of users? These users that want to just be able to kind of buy, an awesome i7, get a Maximus Hero board, get a 240 millimeter IO, and get the most out of it without really knowing anything. Because especially as architectures change, there's a lot of new features that you sometimes have to really kind of inform yourself about how to really maximize them. Alex made a great point of that there's a lot of new knobs and switches in terms of like specialized adaptive voltage policies. We have a lot of extensive VRM customization options, how you want to balance your power stages. Do you want to balance them for temperature, or do you want to balance them for current? There's a lot of these little things to kind of keep in mind. Well, we've done all that already. And so with AIOC, the goal was to really simplify this experience and make it accessible on a hardware level as well as even on an operating system level. So the great thing about this is that users on the compatible boards, which will pretty much be most of the boards that we're touching on, there's a Prime Series board, all the ROG boards, ROG Strix and formal ROG all feature this technology. Our ProArt also features it. TUF Gaming does not, but TUF Gaming still does fully offer standard overclocking experience with OK parts, just not this AIOC implementation. But the cool option essentially is that the user will have the ability to drop in this part, go into the UEFI, and once they go into the UEFI, they actually see an entire prediction table. So see if I can go ahead and bring this up for you here so you guys can.
Oh, yes, please do. I love it. You talk about balancing between the users who kind of want ultimate control of this process and users who just want this process to be streamlined. And I think at different phases of your life, you fall into different categories, at least for me. I used to want ultimate control. Now, if you can make it easy for me, JJ, you're my best friend. Yeah,
there's several options out there like that it will help you from overclocking from one push of a button to all the nitty-gritty knobs that you can go and turn around depending on what you really want to do. So that's make the things a lot much easier. So it's been great. It's been definitely an evolution on overclocking throughout the years.
Yeah, makes it something that is just a lot more accessible to people that are learning about their PC.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea between Intel and its partners, and like an ASUS, just try to bring these all technologies, all these different things that are we thought to be esoteric and obscure, but just bring it to everybody. Like, hey, look, yes, there's an art to it, of course, but hey, it's not as challenging or as difficult as it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still an art, but and there's a lot of people that actually can do it now.
Most definitely. And I know, JJ, you're looking for that asset for us. Are you able to find it? Oh, JJ, we can't hear you now. I don't know if you can hear us. We can't hear you now.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
You're in mute. We're playing conference call bingo.
We lost you. This is the fun about being live streaming, is that you can be looking for an image and somehow change audio settings. It can happen to the best of us.
Yeah, I think.
We still can't hear you, JJ. Can you hear us? Okay, so
Okay,
you
we
can
can
hear
hear
me.
you.
We just can't hear you. Did your mic input change by any chance? Let's see if we can adjust your mic input. And while we're kind of troubleshooting and waiting to see if we can get JJ back, JJ, we still don't have you, but that's okay. See if you can adjust your mic input, and we will be here. We have learned a ton about these new motherboards already, and also about the new CPUs as well. So let's kind of talk about how stuff fits together. Alex, what are people going to get when they combine a new 10th gen Intel processor and an ASUS Z490 motherboard?
So when you combine those two, actually, so as we said before, when you have Intel 10th gen processor, especially if you have the K series processor and you have the Z490, that's when you have that pairing that actually will allow you to have all the different features, including overclocking. So that's kind of what you want to do. If you want to, if you want to overclock or push the limits of your processor, that's what you want to do. You want to pair those two boards, that board, the Z490, that chipset, with the Intel K processor. It could be the i5K or the i7K or the i9K, any of those three processors with a Z motherboard, and you will be able to overclock, of course. But there's other types of boards, like JJ was talking about, that you can actually, still have a lot of the features. The only features that you won't get is just the ability to overclock, but you still get great performance. As we said, these processors already come at really high frequencies out of the box, so it will definitely be able to deliver that in different types of motherboards. And one of the things that I wanted JJ to cover, but I guess I'll steal a little bit of his thunder.
We'll
If you don't
see.
Yeah, one of the things is ASUS actually this morning released, and they have been able to beat seven. Oh, he's back.
Okay.
We can hear you again.
Audio working? Okay, great. All right.
Perfect. So, JJ, welcome back to the stream. We were just kind of talking about ASUS and Intel's history together, and how combining a new 10th gen Intel processor and an ASUS 7490 motherboard, why that's such a great combo.
Yeah, so we were talking about essentially overclocking, and I was talking about that AIOC, but I think Alex was bringing up one of the key achievements that we're super excited about is that on our Apex series board, which has really kind of been a benchmark within the overclocking community since it's been released, along with other Maxima series boards, has now once again kind of reset a new precedence. In the 9th gen, we actually had the #1 records for the 9900K, the 9700K, and the 9600K. And so now we're super excited that, for the 10th gen, we're going to be able to, again, kind of up that ante and be able to show off, essentially this new world record of performance. So we've got the 7.7 gigahertz is going to be the all-core CPU frequency, and then 6.66 gigahertz on terms of the DDR4 frequency. So world record performance in terms of what we're offering on the Apex series board and kind of ROG, and also just showing what's possible with these 10th gen parts. And actually, internally, from some discussion on our team, I think we might even be able to push things a little bit further. So we're excited to kind of kick this off with just this level of performance right now, but of course we're going to continue to look things even further and see how much we can continue to push the envelope.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate you, man, especially in that memory overclocking hitting 66. That is pretty impressive. Not that 7.7 is not impressive at all, but both of those numbers are great.
Yeah, and I think actually that allows us to kind of segue back into the AIOC kind of message that I was talking about. And so, one of the key things, like I was noting, is essentially we've distilled this time and effort that our team has put into testing essentially these CPU parts. And so with AIOC, essentially what would occur is that once the user gets everything installed, they can either enter into the operating system or they can go into the UEFI BIOS. If they're going into the UEFI BIOS, we have a guided wizard that they can actually go through. And that wizard will actually take them through the exact steps of pretty much just telling you, hey, you need to go into the operating system. Once you click enabling this, run your actual workload. And what I mean by workload is whatever you're going to be doing on your system. If that means you want to go ahead and jump in and play, Destiny 2 for 2 hours, do that. If you want to, maybe watch some YouTube, check out some, product pages, maybe do some email, maybe then do a little bit of photo editing in Lightroom, do that. Whatever your workload is, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be tracking the actual temperature performance of the system. We actually monitor per core package information. And the reason why we're doing this is we're actually creating a point value for the level of cooling performance that you have. Once this essentially kind of a load has been monitored in terms of how much temperature, how much the overall performance is that your system has in terms of its cooling level, you're assigned this kind of point value. This point value then kind of goes into the database of information that essentially our team has kind of analyzed. And we can kind of then begin to associate, okay, we know with this level of cooling performance, we can offer you this X corresponding overclock frequency. So if you've got, let's say, a 240 millimeter cooler, as opposed to, let's say, a custom water cooling configuration, you're gonna have two different types of thermal levels of headroom, right? So you can have maybe more overclocking your headroom, of course, on a custom water cooling setup. The really cool part to this, though, is that it's extremely intelligent in terms that we've done a few things that are really important in terms of the pursuit of overclocking. One, we've made it safe and efficient. We're utilizing an adaptive base voltage, which is really kind of the default method that you would want to use with Intel's architecture. It's the most efficient option, which for people that are not kind of familiar, what this really means is that traditionally kind of in manual pursuits of overclocking, there's what's referred to as a static voltage. It pretty much just means that the voltage will stay like this. It stays consistent across the board. It doesn't really deviate. So whether my CPU frequency is going to go down or it's going to go up, that means that the voltage is pretty much staying consistent. That's not really efficient. You're consuming more power, you're producing more heat, you're kind of conditioning the CPU to get adjusted to these higher levels of static voltage. And one of the big things that actually Intel did was really, they were the first to kind of implement this much more intelligent mechanism for adaptive base voltages. So meaning that we can essentially keep the stock operating voltage parameter when the part is working within its normal operating parameters, but at the same time, when it exceeds the operating parameters that have been defined for overclocking pursuits, we can provide more voltage. So that allows you to kind of get the voltage that you need to be able to ensure the stability and reliability when you get to those higher clocks, right? But still kind of help to keep a relative envelope of efficiency, thermal consideration in terms of how much you're dealing with there. And overall helping to maximize CPU lifespan as well. And so when we do the AOC, we automatically take care of that for you. We apply this adaptive voltage. We apply the actual voltage that's needed for the target overclock. And we make all those corresponding adjustments for you. And we also even give you some additional insights and customization in terms of workload. Most users that are probably going to be doing this are probably just going to be doing everyday applications on their system and gaming. But maybe you do gaming and streaming, or maybe you do gaming and a little bit of photo editing or video editing, right? And you might use applications that are more demanding or heavy loading. Again, another very impressive technology that we worked with Intel on implementing in our boards was called an AVX offset. This allowed us the ability to essentially reduce the overclock under conditional workloads. Where we find that maybe you're going to maybe compromise maybe stability, or you're going to have higher levels of thermal consideration because there's more heat that's generated. Because let's say me playing Destiny 2, it's not going to be the same level of thermals that I have to account for if, let's say, I'm going to be rendering a 20-minute 4K video, right? They're two different types of workloads, and in that situation, we can then have that frequency be adjusted. And so normally a lot of these things, they could be, like I said, complicated and time-consuming to try to kind of figure out. But with AOC, we've done that all for you to give you not only a really nice, clean interface that guides you through having all this information at hand, but then also, for, like I said, the simplest, most turnkey experience for users, they can also access it within the operating system. So they can literally just go click one button after they've kind of run their application and gotten that cooler point score, and they're good to go. So we feel this is a really, really impressive technology. It's now in its third generation, and like I said, literally thousands of man hours have gone into this design and development. We're really excited about the community being able to get access to this feature.
Well, and again, thank you so much for streamlining that process, because I think if anything, it gets more people into overclocking that might have been hesitant to kind of mess around before. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, to the actually point, Trisha, and I don't know there if Alex, you did have a point, but we did some very interesting polling, and what we found in the past is that even users that committed to actually purchasing K parts, we found that there was actually a pretty reasonable percentage. Sometimes it'd be as much as 30% of users that never actually overclocked the part. And part of that was, they knew that they were getting great performance because they were already buying a part that already had high level of performance out of the box. And so they were comfortable with that. But whether it was time, whether it was knowledge, whether it was a combination of both, whether it was fear, there was different kind of factors that sometimes would cause them to be like, I don't know if I want to kind of go into that next step, right? Or I just want to make the investment. Sometimes they'll start on it, right? But then they would realize that there's a lot of these other things to kind of take in mind, like I noted earlier, to kind of get this overclocking experience. And so our goal here is to really be able to offer an intelligent, efficient, and effective, implementation to really help to just offer a better experience for users. And that's really been tailor-made, of course, to complement the hardware designs that we have on the boards too, right? So it's a really big balancing act and something that we're really happy about. I will note one thing though, is that for some enthusiasts that might be wondering about, we continue to maintain really great options for easily enabling XMP on our motherboards. It's a one-touch option inside of our UEFI. We actually even have on our RG boards 2 profile options with a specialized kind of optimized XMP profile, where we even make a little bit more tweaks to even get you a little bit more out of that profile, specialized to the design on our motherboards, because for different of our boards, we have optimizations in terms of our memory layout. Like on our RG boards, we have OptiMem 3, which is special kind of grounding planes and other kind of optimizations that we've taken to allow us to get really, really high DRAM frequencies. So we can kind of tweak things to even get you a little bit better DRAM performance. But for AOC, we will only target the CPU frequency. We don't make adjustments to the DRAM. So if you kind of get everything all situated and all well and done there, you would still want to go back and then enable that XMP profile.
So one of the things that is I'm pretty excited about is all these advancements that have been done, like we were talking before, Trisha, among the last couple of years, of how it is all these advancements in software had made it easier for people that to learn how to overclock and start overclocking. Because at the beginning, it has gone from actually changing a crystal oscillator in the motherboard to now being able just to do it over UEFI or actually over your operating system. And so I think ASUS has provided a great amount of tools to help that for those beginners who want to do overclocking, and it's been great. I think you can push a little bit more, and you will be impressed with how much performance you can get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, Trisha, go ahead.
Oh, no, please continue.
Yeah, and I was going to say to that also, though, I think, really spent a lot of time to make sure that this implementation is beneficial for both beginners and a true enthusiast users. I consider myself a true overclocking enthusiast. I love to go in there and kind of adjust everything from the cache ratio to my AVX offset. I want to be able to have my adaptive voltage policies. But the reality is, like I said, is that now with the AOC, even an enthusiast user has access to information immediately by dropping in the processor, getting in their cooler situated, and then going into the UEFI that they wouldn't have without all that effort that we put in. Because when they have that actual prediction table that's available to them in the UEFI, right, they already have a target value that's telling them, okay, for, let's say this 5.3 gigahertz overclock, you're going to need 1.525 in terms of your voltage. We're going to tell you a recommendation in terms of an AVX frequency. We're going to actually make recommendations for our load line calibration setting. So a lot of these things before, where everybody was like, well, Google's your friend or YouTube's your friend, right? Now you don't have to worry about that. And an important thing that sometimes people don't understand is that while sometimes certain guides can be provided or insights into overclocking that are generally true for the architecture overall, every board is designed differently. So, there are certain kind of operating parameters in terms of how voltages are detected, reported, and defined, BRM aspects. There's a lot of kind of subtlety that goes into that. And so the great thing is that you're seeing information that's been tailored by our team for that CPU for our boards. So the values that you're getting are really the best values, specifically because they've been tested kind of by our performance analysis team, right? And this actually segues into, I think, the next part here, where within this generation, a big focus for us is these AI kind of related technologies that I touched on first with AOC, is now also AI cooling. So, Trisha, in the past, you and JC, we've talked about, our fan expert technology, and we still continue to offer this really great level of feature set on our boards where we can automatically calibrate the fans, we can set custom profiles, we can have the fans automatically stop when you're doing minimal workloads, so you can have a really quiet system. But again, kind of on polling and feedback on community, an interesting thing that we found is that while we had really extensive and customizable fan controls, many users didn't actually go in and customize the fan curve. And what I mean by the fan curve is the curve is essentially how your fan is responding based on the temperature, and then its rated level of performance, or what's sometimes referred to as fan duty. So, your fan might be, let's say, rated for 2000 RPM, right? The closer it gets to 2000 RPM, the more cooling it provides you, but of course, the much louder it's going to be. And what we decided to do with AI cooling is something that's really, really cool, and it's done on a hardware level. We actually have a microcontroller that does this, so you can execute it through software, but you can turn it on once again in the UEFI BIOS, just like you can with AIOC. And the really cool part to this is that we will actually monitor the actual temperature of your system. And once we notice the temperature of your system is consistent, so let's say you're in a game and you've been playing that game for 5 or 10 minutes, and let's say the temperature is 65 degrees. Well, maybe your fan is running at like 1800 RPM. So it's creating a little bit of a whirring sound or a little bit of a louder sound to your system. It's not maybe horrible, but it's noticeable, right? Well, what we've done is we say, hey, can we go in there and actually begin to ramp down your fan curve and still give you a pretty close level of the cooling performance that you have, right? But while significantly improving the noise that you're getting from your system. So we built in essentially a target rule. It's about 4 or about 5 degrees that will allow this essentially reduction to occur. But we can, let's say, move it down from, take for instance, something like that 1800 RPM to maybe down to like 1200 RPM. That reduction is quite sizable, so that when you talk about your CPU fans and then all your chassis fans kind of coming down automatically, you get this really nice reduced quiet experience, and you didn't have to do anything. Your system automatically just does it for you. And compared to our previous generation, where you actually had to run like a whole calibration process and have all the fans be pulled, which was still quite easy, it's very simple to do, you don't need to do any of this. Literally just click the button. We will monitor it all on a hardware level, so it doesn't impact gaming. You don't have to worry about any resources or software running in the background. It's all tracked through our I/O controller. We monitor the temperature, we monitor that value, and we make adjustments to it. So we think, again, this is also another really cool option to improve the experience for users. Regardless of whether you're a gamer or whether you're a professional, I think anybody can appreciate having their system be quieter, but also not at the expense of, like I said, significantly sacrificing cooling. We still want to keep your system cool, but we want to be able to offer you a quieter experience. So this is another really cool technology that we're introducing with AI cooling for this generation.
Especially for people who live stream video games, where it's very important that your system's not too loud, but it's also very important that you're getting that performance in the moment. So that's a wonderful feature.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think, the last one is we've always got kind of a lot of other specialized aspects that we put in, with, different ROG motherboards, especially where there's a lot of innovation. But, rounding out kind of the AI-centric technologies, we talked about, of course, that Wi-Fi 6, and we talked about the 2.5G networking. We also have something that we call AI networking. And so with our latest generation of packet priority software called Game First 6, we've done a huge amount of work to essentially have a connected backend database where we actually have automatic service profiling and detection. So when you load up essentially a game or you run an actual active service that you want prioritization, there's some checking to a database system that right now has over 200,000 applications and services, and it's consistently updated, metriced, so that the moment you jump into, let's say, Warzone or Destiny or Fortnite, whatever game you might be playing that's online, the system will automatically prioritize that as that immediate item. And that's important because what we've definitely seen over the last few years is that as you get more and more capable systems, you get SSDs, you get faster memory, faster processors, you tend to do a lot more on your system, right? The running joke for a lot of people is how many tabs do you have open in your browser, right? How many alt tabs are you clicking between, an application, between your browser and your game? The challenge that you have, though, is that there's a lot of now network-centric services, right? There's a lot of different applications that might be fighting kind of for priority in the application layer, right? With games, it's not so much really about what you call throughput. You don't really need huge amounts of throughput, but you need latency. You want to make sure that the latency is as prioritized as possible. So our goal with this AI-related technology is that, especially for the gaming enthusiasts out there, that their applications, right, are prioritized at the very top before any other network-centric applications. So you're not having your latency potentially be affected. So definitely for just gamers that want a smoother, more reliable experience, we're covering it on the hardware side, but we're also making sure to cover it on the software side for you. So that's a great pairing. And the really cool part too, that the game first technology is that it's fully functional on both network connections. So regardless of whether you're a wired gamer or whether you're a wireless gamer, it's entirely available to you to go ahead and customize it, or you can run it, like I said, in that AI kind of intelligent mechanism where it just automatically detects the applications that are running, prioritizes it, and then you're good to go.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Now, ASUS and Intel have consistently worked together, chipset after chipset and CPU after CPU. What can you tell us about some specific CPU and motherboard pairing recommendations? And this is a question for both of you.
Yeah, sure. So I think, first one is maybe Alex, why don't you give us a little bit of context, like before, because we're starting here, I think at the entry side with maybe kind of i3 pairing. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of maybe touch a little bit on kind of what some users can expect just from B and H series base boards. Well, also, for us, of course, we have I think an entry Z490 series that can perfectly complement that, right? But there's, of course, a lot of parts in this 10th gen refresh that aren't K focused, although most, of course, what we're covering is definitely on the K side of the fence, right?
Yeah, so for those the B chipset, so it will be like a Core i3, for example, Core 3, and actually Core 3 right now it's pretty interesting because right now we have the 4 cores and 8 threads that we didn't have before, and it has a pretty respectable frequencies. Actually, the all high turbo is like 4.4 gigahertz. So it's actually pretty great. I mean, like it's for a starting gaming system, it's pretty good, and with all the different features that the B chipset have, actually that ASUS has implemented. So maybe JJ, you can help us on that side of what other features are implemented in there compared to the higher end motherboards.
Yeah, so we've got two kind of focus models that I think we're really trying to recommend for a lot of kind of gamers that are maybe just looking for a great turnkey gaming experience where they don't necessarily want overclocking, or they're also looking to save a little bit in terms of the price point. So we've got Strix B460-G, and then we also have a TUF Gaming B460 Pro. The actual TUF Gaming and actually also comes included with Wi-Fi. So you got a couple of different options. And for a lot of what we've talked about in terms of, like I said, improvements to audio, improvements in networking feature set, rich I/O connectivity, all those things, you're going to still get these on these boards. I think the biggest differential that you're going to find is that you move into the higher end board stack, there's going to be a lot more specialized aspects for, I think, overclocking or specialized aesthetic customization or more niche function. A great example of this might be like, on our highest end ROG series of motherboards, they have a dedicated water cooling zone. So we have temperature inlet and temperature outlet monitoring and water flow monitoring. It's a great feature, but actually the vast majority of builders and gaming enthusiasts don't need that because they're not doing custom water cooling. But right. Custom water cooling guys would really appreciate having that because they don't have to have a secondary piece of hardware in their system. They can actually have it all connected on the motherboard, they can monitor it, and they can have all that great information so that they can really keep track of how efficient their loop is working, the temperatures of their loop. So that's going to be something like you would find that's a differentiation. Or on the audio side, we talked about the isolated audio, but again, ROG, on all our ROG boards, except for the Apex board, they all have an ESS Saber DAC on top of the isolated audio design. So again, a DAC, when paired with a good quality headset, which you probably would see in line with somebody that's probably buying an ROG motherboard, it's going to give you better tonality, open up the sound stage, give you a little bit better detailing, just overall give you a better experience in music, movies, and games. Doesn't mean that the audio experience is poor or bad on those other boards. It's just a standard isolated audio design as opposed to it's more elevated. And so I think that's the way that you always want to look at it is what are you trying to get out of that? But I think a great foundation. B and H with those boards that I talked about, I think great initial choice for that i3 pairing. And I think that works really well, I think, for actually a large amount of kind of the maybe esports related gamers that are out there. So guys that are playing stuff, like
CSGO,
Counter-Strike, any type of MOBA titles, Fortnite, Apex Legends, anything like that, because you're not talking about super demands in terms of like core count. Like if we talked about a game comparison, like Total War, take for instance, it's a very popular series, but it loves core count. Like the more frequency and the more cores you can throw at it, you get better performance. That's not necessarily the case, though, in a lot of esports games where you kind of are coding for a little bit lower denominator in terms of trying to make sure that it plays across more systems. Moving, I think, to the next rung, that a lot of people are going to be interested in will probably be in that i5 segment. I think this is the sweet spot, especially now that we've bumped up the core count here. You've got the overclocking capability. I think that we'll probably see the most type of varied board usage when it comes to these. So here, it's hard. I think my initial recommendation, I think for a lot of people would be our Strix -E board, as well as our Prime -A. I think both of those are going to be great choices, but also the TUF Gaming Z490 Plus is going to be a really good offering. And remember that the Strict series does offer micro ATX and mini ITX. So we have a -G micro ATX variant, and then we have a -I mini ITX variant. So I think that CPU pairing fits really well for regardless of the form factor, regardless of the game, the great overclocking capabilities that I think that part, especially because you'll have a little bit lower thermals to account for because you have less cores as well, means that you're going to see a lot of guys trying to push, that 5.2, guys and gals, 5.2, 5.3 gigahertz, is going to be some, can I get my i5 plugging in there?
Yeah. Not only that, but there's also another Core i5 in there on that stack that does not, is that called actually the KF? So it's the 10600 KF, and the F. So the K we know means it's overclocked, and the F means that it doesn't come with all the graphics. So the embedded graphic doesn't come with it. But the upside in that is sometimes it actually provides a little bit more of a headroom for overclocking. So if you're gaming, most of the gamers, including me, have like a separate video card to go in there. Then that integrated graphics doesn't come as essential as you need to, and maybe that going maybe with that part would also help you, like JJ said, get that a little extra, even more extra headroom to get that overclocking a little bit higher, so hitting those higher frequencies. So, that's also another good part to take into account.
Yeah, I think for a lot of builders, this is going to kind of be that sweet spot CPU, especially I think for the gaming segmentation. But still, at the same time, you've got a solid amount of cores in there that you can still pretty much do anything you want on that system, especially once you start to crack up those clock speeds. But I think a very, very good kind of option for users that we've got a good amount of boards within that space. Moving into the i7, I think that we're going to see definitely also continue a lot of popularity here with the i7 based part. I think this is where we shift into seeing more that for probably this, the expectation for overclocking goes up, right? So with that, the expectation for what you're demanding in the board in terms of trying to give you the best OC experience possible is where we would align this with going with our higher end Strix. So really kind of the first model that we would recommend here as the entry would be our -E SKU. And we didn't touch on it earlier, but a key part of what we've done in terms of a lot of the board design and the VRM heat sinks is that, especially on the ROG side and on the -E, they all feature what's called a C-shaped heat pipe design. So it's kind of like almost a 3-stage type of implementation. So we've not only enlarged the actual heatsink assembly, improved the actual thermal interface material, the actual material that makes contact with the power stages and then the actual heatsink itself, but we also have actually expanded the overall total surface area. So you have 3 different stages, and there's also even support for an optional assist fan if you want to have some active airflow, which can be beneficial because in some situations, if you're using like an AIO cooling, there's not a lot of active airflow that's provided to the VRM assembly. So having actually a direct assist fan can help to just give you a little bit more cooling for your VRM. That is pretty much an option on most of the boards that we have in our lineup, unless they have some type of other design implementation like the Formula, which has native water cooling built into it, which of course will give you the absolute best VRM temperature performance, right? But I think that for that i7, starting off with the -E, you then move into, of course, our Hero, the Apex, the Formula, or the Extreme. Although I think probably the Extreme you're going to see mostly generally only paired with the i9, because I think that for its price point, that's where most users are going to want to be pairing that i9 to the Extreme. So I think i7 we'll see that's kind of spacing between, again, our -E, the Hero, the Formula, or the Apex.
So talk to me now about some pairings for the i9. Let's jump into the top tier.
Yeah, so with the top tier, of course, the super fast, the flagship right here, right, where you're trying to push, absolute highest core clocks. You're trying to get the most out of it. I think here again we're trying to really focus on getting the most performance possible and ensuring the best stability and reliability under load for that high core count configuration along with that high frequency. And so there, I think that the critical parts there again are about ensuring the best thermal stability and the power delivery. So there, our focus is going to be on the Apex board. That world record board that we talked about is going to be able to get that job done for you. The formula is going to be an outstanding choice. The EK cross chill design that we have, the really cool part about it is that it does support both air and water configurations. So you don't have to run custom water cooling. If you like some of the other benefits that the formula offers, you can go ahead and run that in a traditional air-cooled configuration with an AIO, but you would kind of be wasting, that integrated water block. But if you take advantage of that water block, you're going to be able to keep that VRM super cool and kind of trying to keep it simple. The cooler that you keep that VRM, the more efficient it's going to operate, and the better the efficiency and the lower the thermals that it has can help to just eke out a little bit more sustained kind of margin of performance for when you're kind of really trying to push the highest CPU frequency under load, especially. So we think the formula makes a really, really great choice. The Apex makes a great choice, and it's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum where it has a super massive heatsink assembly that's really kind of purpose designed for just passive airflow design, and you can see that here with the Apex, where you can see that's all surface area there. And then the Extreme also would work really, really well. But same time, we get some people that are kind of always looking for that value prop, where maybe they want to take that i9 and drop it into a board that's a little bit lower price, but still get a great experience. And so we still think there that the Dash E, with its 14 power stages, can still hold up and be able to offer a very good experience for Core i9 users. But I would generally recommend that for most of those users, they be considering one of the formal ROG boards. So Hero, Apex, Formula, or the Extreme.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those recommendations. Alex, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think it's been great. The partnership with ASUS has been amazing. Just look at the world records you guys have achieved in the past couple of days. And no, very excited to partnership with them, and we're very happy about the launch of also the new chipset, the new motherboards, and of course, a new processor.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, it does look like we are running out of time for today. I know you both probably have a lot of other things that you have to do since this is such a big launch day. So we truly appreciate you taking the time to join us here at Newegg today. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Trisha.
it's fantastic to be here, and I do want to let anybody know that if we didn't kind of answer any of your questions, on the ASUS side of the fence, we'll definitely be taking actually more. We recently launched a brand new Facebook group that's targeted towards PC DIY community of users. And so in this group, if you come in and you join and you want to find out more about specific features, functions, design attributes, recommendations on builds, as well as even just insights into a lot of what Intel is offering on our platforms as far as the motherboards, we'd love to be able to give you guys insights there. So head over to the actual Facebook group. We'd love to answer your questions. So we'll be doing that actually Q&A a little bit later today. So if you guys have questions that didn't get covered here in the stream, make sure to check us out there.
Awesome. Thank you. So that ASUS Facebook group Q&A that JJ just mentioned, the link is in the description currently for that, and it's facebook.com/group/ASUS And again, make sure that you check that out later today, especially if you have any other questions that this live stream has not answered for you thus far. So everybody, again, thanks to you both for being here. Thanks to everyone at home for watching. Remember to click the links in the description below this video to find all the products that we talked about today. All of Intel's new 10th gen core desktop processors, all of the new ASUS Z490 motherboards, special launch bundles. It's all on Newegg. This is Trisha Hirschberger signing off. Bye, everybody.